Poor Soseki. On the day of the incident, I was ordered on a special surveillance assignment in this disguise. I just managed to catch that crab that was suddenly heard caterwaul behind me. I ran into the beach hut at once, where I found the pair in question. Yes! The young girl was astride in the Englishwoman. Astride the Englishwoman, dagger in hand, she stabbed wildly. Uh-huh. That's all I'm gonna say there. I saw blood on the blade. It proved to me that she stabbed the victim multiple times. I'm not even gonna bother pressing these statements. Indeed, it does appear that from this testimony that both witnesses present saw it. What? The very moment of this heinous crime. What? Now, if you will recall, I promised evidence as well. What phrase did I use again? Ah, yes. Was it damning evidence? What do you have there, Counsel? A so-called fountain pen, is it? Correct, Your Excellency. I found it at the scene whilst examining the body. It appears that in her dying moments was her final ounce of strength. The victim clutched a piece of evidence that would positively identify her killer. What? Your Excellency, if you would cast your eyes over the photographic print of the crime scene once more. Yeah, she was holding the pen, put it in evidence so I can inspect it and find a contradiction. Goodness me. Yes, the victim is clearly grasping quite deliberately there in her hand. That's right, the fountain pen. And if you would kindly examine the pen, Your Excellency. It has her initials on it, doesn't it? The owner's initials have been engraved on the ebonite barrel. R.M. Ray Membami. The initials of the defendant. No! Calm down, Sasato-san. We have a contradiction immediately. This fountain pen will be admitted immediately as crucial evidence. I can't inspect the pen further. So, have I admitted anything? Decisive testimony and damning evidence. There's a bright blue sky outside the courthouse today. Perfect weather to ascribe guilt, I feel. I don't understand. Prosecutor of 9 months ago had none of this man's poise. Counsel for the defense, you begin your cross-examination now. Naruhodo-san. Naruhodo. That means... Oh, yes, me. Is there another Naruhodo in my courtroom? Actually, there isn't even a single Naruhodo in your courtroom. Cousin Ryutaru, pull yourself together, please. Alright, I've seen this countless times as a judicial assistant. Finding inconsistencies in witnesses' testimonies to prove that they're lying somehow. That's there is to it. That's how a real lawyer would handle a cross-examination. So let's see what I can do. So I feel like I can object to either of their statements. Because in this statement, he's saying she stabbed wildly, which immediately implies more than one time. And then you got Hosonaga saying that she stabbed him multiple times.
Objection!
It's that accusatory cry that just welled up from deep inside me. I think I finally understand. Every time Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san have stood here at this bench, the stakes have been very, very high indeed. What is the meaning of that menacing pose, Counsel? I'd like the witnesses to clarify something for me. Who, what? Where? When? What? How? Not you, Soseki-san. This query is directed at Inspector Hosonaga. To me? In your statement just now, you said that the victim was stabbed multiple times. Yes, that's right. As I said when I entered the hut, the defender was already standing over the victim, bloody knife in hand, like a murderous demon. Hey, what up, Ford? And yet, that cannot be. What? Get to the point, please, Counsel. In the post-mortem report, it clearly states that the victim was stabbed one time only. Ugh. In other words, Inspector Hosanaga's testimony is clearly flawed. And Soseki-san. Me? You claim to have seen Membami-san in Zero's of stabbing the victim. Yes, I did. Wildly! Both you and Inspector confirmed the same point. That there was already blood on a knife that you saw the defendant holding. Yes, and? It's quite simple. We know the murder weapon was used to stab the victim only once. Therefore, there's no way that there could have been blood on a knife if a single stab had already occurred. True. So what exactly is your contention, Counsel? Are you ever going to tell us? Their statement is false. And I thought can't be this stuff is? Yes, Your Excellency. There's only one logical conclusion. Soseki-san in fact saw it was not the moment that the defendant stabbed the victim at all. The moment the defendant, in fact, was through the blade from the victim's body. That can't be! Excellent, Susato. You exploded at them with that objection, and then proceeded to pull them apart systematically.
Objection!
Well, this takes me back. Yes, I seem to remember your cousin staged a scene much like this in a trial 9 months ago. A half-witted child was a half-baked objection, attempting to steal the show. You're right. There were certain similarities. Except that so-called half-witted child managed to outwit the prosecution, who has only half a head of hair. Slander! My head is quite adequately dressed. In any case, all this is talk of stabbing and withdrawing and multiple wounds. makes not a jot of difference. What? Why not? Engage your brain, young man. Where the accused first plunged the deadly weapon into the victim, that was a fatal blow. And it was at that moment she just had. And it was that moment, just as she had withdrawn the blade ready for her next strike, the witness's son. The knife was already tainted with blood because the accused already stabbed the victim. All your success was shown with your little display. Is that the mustache author is prone to moments of extravagance. Shut up, Auchi. I'm in agreement with the prosecution. The defendant was seen wielding the blade at all. That is sufficient grounds for her actions to be viewed with suspicion. But what if she was drawing a blade? Now we are back to where we started. Sorry? Consider this, young yokel boy. As a student girl is innocent as you claim, then why would she have pulled the blade from the victim? And with a demon's cold-blooded composure, too. The prosecution demands an explanation, and it had better be good. Why did Ray pull out the knife? Ah, yes. One for the jugular. What does Father mean by that? Court will hear your answer then, counsel. Truth is, I don't really know. I have to come up with a possible reason here. We don't have a case. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife blade out of the victim's body was surely so she could. According to a post-mortem report, the victim's death was not instant. That's correct. It is though it's thought that she would have remained conscious for a short while after sustaining the injury. Indeed, giving her the time to take hold of this piece of evidence that clearly indicates her killer. So, the point is, being a medical research assistant, Mimbami-san was compelled to act when she faced the wounded victim. Instinctively, she pulled out the blade in an attempt to save Miss Brett's life. I just love how the music just goes quiet. Did you hear that, Your Excellency? It would seem this is the best we'd expect from this young yokel. Indeed. It's just me, but does not feel much colder in here. Your Excellency, if I may. Speak, witness. I would like another opportunity to testify. In respect to the slipshod assertion just put forward by the yokel defense counsel, I mean. Slipshod? An excellent idea, Inspector. Our young yokel hopefully has a modicum of knowledge when it comes to the law, it seems. But in matters of medicine, he appears to possess not an iota of common sense. Very well, Inspector. I'll repeat your request. We'll testify again before the court on the subject of the defense counsel's assertion. Yes, sir. I will do so flawlessly. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. basic knowledge that any medical research assistant with an ounce of sense ought to know. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife out of the victim. Let's not forget, the young student did have a motive for killing the victim. That man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor. Is what you said true, Inspector? Could pulling a knife from a wound really cause the wound to bleed heavily? Yes, think the weapon as a stopper in the wound that prevents excessive blood loss. Until the doctor is ready to provide proper treatment, that stopper should be removed. Oh, Ha! This is why yokels should stay on the farm. Even a quack from some obscure mountain village would have such basic knowledge. Anyone who's ever given someone a little poke with a knife and pulled it out again knows it. Well, I've never stabbed it, you see, or pulled a blade out of a wound, so... Of course you haven't. I didn't bring you up to behave like that. Father, is it true, what they're telling me? Yes, it's a basic remedical knowledge for medics. Ray would have been well aware of it. If she were to claim ignorance to such fundamentals, that would prove fatal in many ways. But then, why would Ray have done it? Could she have pulled out the knife in full knowledge that it would be fatal to Miss Brett? I don't know. She never once mentioned anything about the knife to me. It seems almost impossible to believe. Could my friend actually have... Sasato! Yes? Pull yourself together. We mustn't lose sight of why we're here. Counsel, it's time for your cross-examination. Yes, Your Excellency. However, I must warn you that if your cross-examination fails to identify any issue with the established facts, I will be moving to my education immediately afterwards. I understand. Believing in your clients and fighting for their cause till the bitter end. Knew it would be hard, but no idea it would be this hard. Yeah, I feel like I've heard of something like that happening before.
Hold it!
You say doing it without thinking could be a problem. You say doing it without thinking could be a problem. Does that mean if you use due care and attention, it would be alright? I wouldn't have thought this needed spelling out, really, but it's like a stopper in the wound. Remove it, and a serious hemorrhage will occur. In other words, a medic would need to be present before any attempt was made to withdraw the blade. Doing it without thinking would be madness. You just can't do it. Oh, well, thank you so much for the thorough explanation. You see, Counsel, when you act without thinking, the result is a bloodbath. Back to witness's testimony, please.
Hold it!
In that case, there's an obvious explanation here. Which is... Clearly, the defendant, Ray Mbanza, does not possess an ounce of sense. Are you saying... what? Sasato-san, what are you saying? What do you think about that, Professor Mikotoba? I'm not sure that you should be labeling your best friend as lacking common sense. Well, I thought it'd be better than label her as a murderer. I don't know, young people. I don't know. Young people today, if that's friendship, I don't understand it. Careful, Counsel. A lack of common sense can be a very dangerous thing. That's life, I'm afraid. Lesson everyone must learn. Hopefully you can see now that there's really basic medical knowledge. Being involved in medical research, Membami-san would have certainly been aware of it.
Hold it!
But the defendant had suddenly encountered somebody she knew was lying on the ground bleeding to death. The sight could have shocked her. Her delicate sensibilities causing her to remove the blade inadvertently. I really don't think inadvertent actions can explain this. The woman is a medical research assistant. I can't imagine she would behave so irrationally. Well, but irrational behavior is a woman's prerogative, isn't it? Oh dear, you have a lot to learn about women. Only a small-minded man could have such a bigoted views. Uh-oh. Dear, perhaps I'm letting my male persona take hold a little too much. Well, I have managed to convey the basics now. I should cover the medical side of the argument.
Hold it!
Whatever the motive, it just isn't Mami-san's nature to do something so awful. But she had both the motive and opportunity. That's very hard to argue against. But you don't know the defendant.
Objection!
And you, counsel, don't appear to know the law. Yes, evidence is the only way to convince the court of your argument, not feelings. With this, pledging to defend her, I would almost say I pity the accused. So do I. Inspector, reiterate your point about the defendant's motive, please. Ah, yes. This rat was in many ways sworn enemy of Membami-san.
Hold it!
Well, yes, that's true. Dr. Wilson recognized Membami-san's talent and offered her a position of assistant despite her being a woman. She was extremely grateful to him. Yes, the English appear to have been a very broad-minded individual. Dr. Wilson had no time for outdated traditions. He met with opposition, of course, but he believed firmly in Membami-san's abilities. Clearly the defendant was in the man's debt, which only serves to prove my point. Freinu that was throwing a knife would threaten Miss Brett's life further. I just can't think of any way to explain why she did it. Sato, times like these when it's especially important to remember the fundamentals. Evidence is what counts in the court, isn't it? Of course, but the court record doesn't sometimes. Forget its face value. Could I just not examine it in greater detail earlier? Are you gonna let me examine the pen further now? Is that gonna be the crack here? Ah. So if you need reminding of the rudiments, you need only ask. I'll do my very best to help. Kazuma-san are always evidence with their hands. Examine things in greater detail with By the look in your eyes, it's coming back to you. Go through the court record again and have a thorough look at everything. You may find a clue. Yes, I'll do it straight away. Newspaper from Society. Deadly poison stolen from Yume University. I'm calling it! It's a he got killed by poison. Exclusive. Deadly poisons stole from Yume University Research Laboratory. Yume's medical research. Father, isn't that your lab? What the? Let me see that. The poison's been stolen. It's this morning's paper that Saseki-san gave us. Are you saying you didn't know? As embarrassing as that is, as the head of the laboratory, I didn't not heard of such a thing. One Earth reporter gleaned his information. Come to think of it, there was no article mentioning this story in our paper this morning, was there? It's a highly toxic poison we were working on in the strictest confidence. I'd put Ray in charge of the product. Ray? She was managing it? So right in here is true. That means she tried to hide the theft from me. Moreover, the details were leaked somehow. Don't believe it. Read this article carefully. So yeah, this is the interview. Photographer managed to capture the moment in his hand karate chopped me on the... Do hope you weren't hurt. So what's that emblem here? Look. But... Isn't it Yume University? Business of some kind. The pen doesn't in fact belong to Ray. Where the hole's inked. Yes, you fill it by drawing it. Ink bottle up, in it. Something wrong. So it doesn't actually appear to be any ink in there at all. Yes, you're right. It's pretty much empty. Refrigerator. Final lecture at Yume University by Saseki Natsume on the 11th of August. It has come to light that a very disturbing incident took place. A deadly poison being secretly developed in the university's forensic science laboratory was stolen. Even the smallest amount entering the body, either via the mouth or via a wound from a poison-laced blade, would prove fatal in minutes. Current methods cannot detect the newly developed chemical. The university would not have would have to be consulted. Onset of symptoms occurring in minutes, starting with impaired breathing, ending with acute contraction of the pupils. Remember what I said earlier when we read the autopsy report, how her pupils contracted? Such symptoms would suggest that this toxin is apparently an entirely new species of alkaloids and rumored to have been commissioned by the military. Okay, but what do I object to?
Objection!
Okay, game. Okay, this is how you want to play it? This is how you want to play it? No, there's one possibility. One very good reason why the defendant might have decided to withdraw the knife from the victim's wound. What? Ha! The yokel not only has poor grasp of the law, but also is also a poor loser. Tell us then, what possibility do you think you've identified? It's here. In this newspaper article about a deadly poison have been stolen from the laboratory at Imperial Yuma Unit.
Objection!
The victim perished from a stab wound. Poison has no relevance to this case. But Prosecutor Auchi, we will let the defense speak. But a newspaper article. The court cannot rely on the kind of hearsay those wretched publications carry. Counsel for the defense. I'm going to need some tangible basis for your claim. You will indicate to court precisely what part of the newspaper article mentioned affirms your assertion. Your Excellency. Yes, of course. Thank you. Gray would never have done something to further endanger Miss Brett's life without just cause. 20 articles. Okay, so I'm guessing what the claim we're gonna make here is that, like, May knew about the poison being stolen, so she found Miss Brett stabbed in the back with a knife, and she feared that the poison was on the blade, so she had to take it out as quickly as possible to stop the poison from spreading. The article reveals the following property about the poison in question. When a toxin enters the body on a knife laced with the poison, it's rapidly absorbed and causes death in minutes. Are you suggesting the knife used to attack Miss Brett was laced with this very poison? It would explain why the defendant, Mbami-san, would have withdrawn the blade as soon as possible. Yes, the truth is, it was an attempt to stop the poison from entering the victim's body. What?
Objection!
This is complete and utter nonsense. Not at all. The defendant withdrew the knife blade from the victim's body not to accelerate the woman's demise, but to save her life. The prosecution cannot deny the possibility. Have you not read the post-mortem report? The cause of death was hemorrhage. The word poison does not appear. No, it appears nowhere in the document. Poison can't be detected. That's because by acting quickly to remove the blade, the defendant prevented the poison from taking hold.
Objection!
Oh, please. That's clearly desperation. The weasel's breaking at last breaking of poison has nothing to do whatsoever with this case, as I believe the defense is well aware. We have no proof that the information in this wretched newspaper article is reliable anyway. In that situation, what the student should have done is waited for medical assistance to arrive. Then it wouldn't have helped. But instead, you claim that she suspected poisoning and took the potentially lethal decision to remove the blade. She must have had a strong reason for her suspicions then, or the argument makes no sense. Exactly. How well put, Inspector. On what grounds did she do it? Yokel. Why did Ray suspect the stolen poison was involved? If you want grounds, I'll give you grounds. What? You can't possibly. From your expression, Counsel, it would appear those are not empty words. But naturally, you stand in a courtroom as a lawyer. You must be aware that words alone, empty or not, are of no value in a modern justice system. This court demands evidence. Yes, Your Excellency, I'm well aware of that. I've seen it many times. My place at his side in the Old Bailey. In that case, Counsel, we present the proof to the court now. What evidence demonstrates a clear link between this case and the poisoning? Would it be the post-mortem report? Because...
Take that!
I'm going with this. I would ask the court to refer to the notes section of the post-mortem report, which reads, extreme meiosis, pupil constriction, was observed in the victim. Clearly, being a yokel was no knowledge of forensic science. I had no idea, so please do tell me. Presumably, the fact that this condition of the victim was noted in the post-mortem report means that it's an unusual symptom of death. Well, under normal circumstances, the pupils dilate when someone dies. There was an extreme constriction instead. That's most certainly unusual, yes. What are you doing, you yokel detective? In a newspaper article, there's the following information about the stolen poison. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, and it was acute contraction of the pupils prior to death. What? If the defendant, upon seeing the victim stabbed in the back, happened to notice the pupils of Miss Brett's eyes had been constricted severely. Yes, as a medical research assistant, she would have suspected poison immediately, without doubt. Prosecutor Auchi, I think you'll agree, 'tis is a very compelling evidence. You yokel student and yokel professor! I believe the defense has expertly demonstrated a credible reason for the defendant's actions. No. Eugen Mikotoba. Yes, Your Excellency. I believe you are the best place here to confirm or deny the veracity of the defense counsel's argument. You will tell the court the truth about the details reported in the newspaper, please. It pains me to have to admit it, but I'm afraid I don't know. You don't know? The toxin was kept under lock and key in my laboratory, certainly, but I was unaware of any theft. Do you mean to tell the court the reports of this theft are unfounded? No, Your Excellency. Without returning to the laboratory to investigate myself, I couldn't say. Ha! Listen to the bumbling academic. Unaware of the theft of the secret state research from his own workplace until he reads of it in a newspaper. I take full responsibility for the incompetence of my supervisor. A pitiful situation for the university professor. You should have more control over your students, rather than allowing them off on killing sprees. That's totally unfounded. None of this is Professor Mikotoma's fault. It's all my fault. Pray. And Bobby, you stand accused here. Outbursts like this will not be tolerated. But it was me. I was the one who noticed that the poison we were developing had been stolen. What? So you knew? I'd been placed in charge of overseeing the project. So on the day that the professor and Soseki-san were interviewed together for the newspaper, that's when I noticed some of the poison was missing. Just a tiny amount of this. Why didn't you let me know immediately? I was scared. The whole project was supposed to be confidential, but some of the toxin had somehow been taken. So, I decided to try to get back before anyone else found out. Because I had a very good idea who the thief was. You don't mean... Yes, of course. It was that dainty English. Miss Jesseline Brett? That's why I decided to join the little group of people going to the seaside. Inside the beach, I confronted Miss Brett. She just sat on the stool in the back of the hut, smiling sweetly at me, as if she knew that she was still untouchable. Knows you stole the poison. Well, now, whatever do you mean? Then, she suddenly got to her feet, before falling to her knees in front of me and then collapsing on the floor. That's when I saw the knife in her back. Couldn't understand what had just happened. Then, a moment later, I was seized with fear. The pupils in her eyes they'd shrunk to tiny ones. I don't believe it. In other words, we realized that the victim was suffering the effects of the stolen poison. My mind started racing. I hadn't seen anything pass Miss Brett's lips whilst I had been poisoned, which left only one possible way for the poison to have entered her body. On the blade of the knife in her back. That train of thought was what spurred you to withdraw the blade? Yes, that amount had entered her bloodstream was small enough. She might still have a chance. That's why I'd hoped. Really, I'm so sorry for staying silent all this time. Your attempt to hide the truth of what happened is not something that can be overlooked. However, I have duly noted the courage with which you confessed in that end. Thank you, Your Excellency. It's barely perceptible, but I do think the balance has shifted a little here. This courtroom now.
Objection!
Well, Mbambi-san, if that's the case, perhaps you could explain how Miss Brick came to be stabbed. Well, you have no answer because the simple truth is that you stabbed the victim motivated by revenge.
Objection!
But you have no conclusive evidence to prove that assertion, do you? Oh? I have evidence, and it's very much conclusive. What's the prosecution counsel up to? Rick hesitated for a moment there. I'm sure of it. You will produce the aforementioned evidence at once, Prosecutor Auchi. Perhaps some praise is due. Young Yoko's student. What? I'd imagine there would be no need for me to submit this evidence. Where did this picture come from? But you brought this on yourself. This was taken from the back of the tent, then. Because this is taken from the entrance. She's facing away. That means this picture had to have been taken from, like, back here. So how is it conclusive evidence? That's highly suspicious. Could a more damning shot exist? The cruelty in the air of the beach is palpable. This evidence, more than any other, reveals the true extent of the accused's murderous nature. For it shows the precise moment that Mibami-san plunged her dagger into the victim's back. Does not show that. There's not any conclusiveness to that statement there. I don't believe it. Don't believe it. It's bullcrap. Don't believe it for a single second. From what May was saying, Jesseline stood up and then collapsed in front of her. So that means the poison was already in her somehow. So, like, that's it. I want to investigate this new picture more. Counsel for the defense. Was it you who was responsible for that shrill scream that just pierced my core? Perhaps his voice has yet to break. These yokels are slow of mind and slow to mature. I'll show you who's slow to mature. Careful now. Sato is starting to show her face again. It's often said that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and here we have ample proof. The court will accept this extremely cogent photograph as evidence. Alright, so what they were saying earlier is that when the knife was first put in, the blood wouldn't be able to escape. But here we are with her grabbing the knife, and there's blood all over her back. Kinda doesn't make sense. Look at that blood. I can't believe he had a photograph like that up his sleeve the entire time. Such a stark image. Really lost for years. Wait a minute, I don't understand. How did you... I mean, who took that photograph? Ray.
Objection!
That's of no importance here. Stop trying to divert attention. No, it is important to Auchi, because they're a witness. They need to be here. Oh.
Objection!
That is an absurd thing to say. It's crucially important. Whoever took this photographic print was a witness to Miss Brett's death. The court must be allowed to hear this person's testimony. Ah! I'll uphold the defense's demand. The prosecution will reveal the identity of the person responsible for taking the photograph at once.
Well, I'm afraid I can't do that.
Pardon?
You see, this print arrived at the Imperial Police Bureau headquarters by express post yesterday. But there is nothing to indicate the sender's name or address. The provenance of the print is unknown.
Then you can't submit. Like, how can this be used as evidence then? Is it you don't know who it came from, though, so that makes it highly suspicious. Like, how do they have it? How'd they get this print? You need, like, you can't, like, confirm, like, what was, they did, what? Goodness. Are we to understand, then, counsel, that in full knowledge of the fact that this photographic print has the murkiest of origins, you nevertheless believed it for the submission as evidence in the Supreme Court? When you first produced that print before, I noticed that you hesitated for a brief moment. Because you knew that it wasn't completely reliable evidence, didn't you?
Silence, you yokel student and blabbering professor. What matters is the blatant truth that this print so eloquently expresses.
But the defendant had already admitted to pulling the blade from the wound. Clearly, this isn't the moment the knife was plunged into the victim's back, but
the moment it was withdrawn. Don't waste the court's time with your rambling.
Indeed, without knowledge of who produced this print, we have no means of verifying the claim. In a sense, it captures without doubt the most compelling evidence presented to the court. No, it shouldn't be allowed. Without being able to prove, like, the details behind the picture, you can't use this. Oh no. Sato, this is the time for you to fight. If what you've established so far is the truth, there can be no doubt. This photograph shows the moment Ray withdrew the blade from the victim. Yeah, I need to prove that somehow. Every day you come against a Takasuchi Auchi in the court of law. If I can't determine who took this photograph, then the trial is going to come to an end. There must be a clue somewhere we're working out who took it. Yes, there is. Well, counsel. Your Excellency, the burning question is for the truth is. I have the answer. This isn't about whether or not I can come up with an answer now. Simply have to. The identity of the person who took the dramatic photographic print is, I assure you, something the defense can and will reveal.
What? No! You can't possibly. But as you so boldly claim you can, please do enlighten us.
Unfortunately, I'm unable to present a name.
How utterly underwhelming. Do you really believe you could?
However, I am able to present evidence. The defense has a piece of evidence that reveals the important details about the photographer's identity.
What?
Very well then, counsel. Present your proof to the court. What piece of evidence do you claim reveals something about the identity of the mystery photographer?
Take that!
The piece of evidence in question is this.
Huh?
What do you mean? Come on.
bullcrap. Okay. So, feel something about the identity of the mystery photographer.
Take that!
How is it this newspaper? Roka's England return tells all. It's not the headline, it's the photograph. Are you kidding me? Who's gonna look at that? Look closely, you'll notice that there are some white lines on the right-hand side. Yes, indeed. They had already caught my eye as it happened. Ha! What of it? A shadow of some kind, presumably, for branches of a tree, or the like. There are no trees growing inside my laboratory at the university, I can assure you. Now, if you look closely at this photograph, good gracious! Yeah, I saw the crack there the entire time. I didn't suspect it to be, like, I never noticed it in this. Like, you think I'm looking at this? You think I'm looking for that? Good gracious. Yes, exactly the same pattern of lines is present in this photograph.
Objection!
Well, that tells us nothing. Ha, yes, the shadows of kind, definitely, from the branches of a tree. There wouldn't be any trees growing inside the hut at the beach council. What's quite remarkable about it is that the two patterns are absolutely identical. How could such an extraordinary similarity have transpired? Curious matching pattern appears on both photographic prints. It is a result of obviously, it must be due to a problem with the camera used to take the photographs. With the photographic device? Yes, we can confidently say that the camera's lenses must be scratched. The scratched lens causes unwanted lines to appear in every print taken with the device. In short, the two photographs under consideration were taken with the same camera. But there must be hundreds of such camera devices here in the capital. It would be utterly impossible to identify the owner of this particular one. Wouldn't the newspaper have the person's name?
Objection!
I think you're forgetting, Prosecutor Auchi, that one of the photographs is featured in a newspaper. One of the photographs is featured in a newspaper. A newspaper? That's right. The author of that book is the mysterious witness to this crime. What? Minelme. Is this the photographer that was with Soseki? I see. Why were you... What? I see why you were called a Roush's England returnee. What are you yelling about? You've already testified. It's Minome, I tell you. It's mini memo. Mini memo. Mini memo. Soseki-san?
What was that? There's our M. What did you say? Meanie Mimo? Ever since I returned to Japan, a reporter from Shoyu News has been hounding me, following my every move. It is the photographer that's with them. Reporter by the name of Raiten Meanie. Yes, hounding me from dusk till dawn till dusk. Ah, now that he mentions it. There he is. He's got some ink on his hand, too. The same reporter be. Camera to the left of him, a notebook to the right. There I am, stuck in the middle with right and a meanie memo. So you're saying that this picture was taken by meanie memo? Yes, my lord, your excellency, Esquire. Officer, find a newspaper where it wants to bring him to my courtroom. Should be right there, wouldn't he? We will adjourn for a short recess in the meantime. Yes, your excellency. As you say, your excellency. One more thing. I want this knife, the murder weapon, examined for traces of poison. We will solicitate the assistance of the Imperial University's medical department for the task. Understood? Meh. Many memo!